Tonight, we travel softly into a different kind of history. Not a history of battles. Not a history of crowns and ceremonies. Not a history of famous names carved into stone. Instead, we enter the quieter rooms of the Victorian world. We walk through narrow streets before sunrise. We step into homes where feelings were often hidden behind careful manners. We sit beside ordinary families as they move through long days of work, duty, routine, and silence. As the night grows deeper, we will explore how a society built on discipline, restraint, and self-control slowly shaped generations of emotionally quiet adults. So settle into a comfortable position. Allow the day to drift away. And let the sounds of the modern world grow distant. Our journey begins in the soft gray light of an English morning many years ago. The city is still asleep. A thin layer of mist hangs above the streets. Rows of brick houses stand quietly beneath a pale sky. Chimneys wait for the first fires of the day. The air feels cool and damp. Somewhere in the distance, a horse slowly pulls a cart over uneven stones. Inside one modest home, a family is beginning to wake. The father rises first. He dresses quietly in the darkness. His movements are practiced and careful. There is little conversation. The day ahead is already understood. Work must be done. Responsibilities must be met. A small fire crackles in the hearth. The mother prepares breakfast in near silence. Bread. Tea. Perhaps a little porridge. Nothing elaborate. Nothing unnecessary. The children soon emerge from their rooms. They rub sleep from their eyes and take their places at the table. The room is not cold, but neither is it especially warm. Comfort is rarely the purpose of the morning. The family eats together. Yet very few words are spoken. To modern ears, the silence might feel unusual. But in many Victorian homes, quietness was not seen as strange. It was often considered respectable. Children learned this lesson early. They learned that strong feelings were not always meant to be displayed. Excitement was softened. Anger was controlled. Fear was hidden. Sadness was carried privately. A child who remained calm was often praised. A child who cried too loudly might be reminded to compose themselves. These lessons appeared in small moments throughout the day. A scraped knee. A disappointment. A disagreement. An accident. Each event became an opportunity to practice self-control. Over time, these small lessons accumulated. They settled quietly into daily life. The Victorian era stretched across much of the 19th century. During these years, society changed rapidly. Factories expanded. Cities grew. Railways crossed the countryside. New inventions appeared. Large populations moved from rural villages into crowded urban neighborhoods. Yet alongside these changes, many people continued to value discipline and restraint. Respectability became an important social ideal. People were often judged by how they behaved in public. A calm appearance suggested reliability. A controlled voice suggested maturity. Strong emotional displays could sometimes be viewed as signs of weakness or poor character. Of course, real human emotions never disappeared. People loved deeply. They worried constantly. They experienced grief, joy, loneliness, and hope. But many learned to carry these feelings beneath the surface. Like a river flowing quietly beneath winter ice, emotion remained present even when it was difficult to see. As morning arrives fully, the streets outside become busier. Shopkeepers unlock doors. Workers move toward factories. School children hurry along sidewalks. Coal smoke slowly rises into the sky. The city awakens. Among the crowds, thousands of ordinary people begin another day shaped by expectations they rarely question. A young office clerk walks toward his workplace. His shoes strike the pavement with steady rhythm. He knows how he should behave. He knows how he should speak. He knows how he should present himself. Respectability offers opportunities. Self-control earns trust. Emotional restraint is part of becoming an adult. These ideas are reinforced everywhere. At school. At church. At work. Inside the family home. Books and newspapers often praise discipline. Advice manuals encouraged careful behavior. Teachers rewarded obedience. Parents passed lessons to children. Employers expected composure. The result was not a single rule enforced by one authority. It was something quieter. Something woven into daily life. People absorbed these expectations gradually. Often without noticing. Imagine a young boy attending school on a rainy morning. He enters a classroom filled with rows of desks. The teacher values order. Students sit upright. Lessons proceed according to schedule. Attention is rewarded. Disruption is discouraged. The boy learns mathematics, reading, writing, history. But alongside these subjects, he learns something else. He learns how to behave, how to remain still, how to wait patiently, how to manage frustration, how to control visible emotion. Years later, these lessons may feel completely natural. He may no longer remember learning them at all. A similar process unfolds for young girls. They also receive constant messages about appropriate behavior, gentleness, patience, modesty, composure. Different expectations may exist for boys and girls, yet both are encouraged to manage emotion carefully. As the years pass, these habits become part of identity itself. The afternoon sun moves across rooftops. Factory whistles echo through the city. Workers continue their routines. Inside offices, clerks bend over ledgers. Inside workshops, craftsmen focus on repetitive tasks. Inside homes, mothers manage countless responsibilities. Life requires endurance. Many families face uncertainty. Illness remains common. Medical knowledge is limited compared to later generations. Children sometimes die young. Parents may lose loved ones unexpectedly. Grief touches nearly every household. And yet public displays of sorrow often remain carefully controlled. This does not mean people felt less pain. In many cases, they may have felt it deeply. Letters from the period reveal immense affection and heartbreak. Personal diaries often contain powerful emotions. Private moments allowed feelings to emerge more freely. But public life frequently demanded restraint. One might cry quietly behind a closed door. One might write sorrow into a journal. One might carry sadness silently for years. The emotional world of the Victorians was often rich and complicated. Yet much of it remained hidden beneath composed expressions. As evening approaches, families begin returning home. Gas lamps flicker to life. Golden light appears behind windows. The city softens. Inside a small house, supper is prepared. Children gather around the table. Parents discuss practical matters. Expenses. Work. School. Household concerns. The conversation remains measured. Polite. Controlled. Affection certainly exists. but it may not always appear in ways modern people expect. A father who rarely says "I love you" may still work long hours to support his family. A mother who seldom speaks openly about emotions may still spend every day caring for her children. Love is often expressed through duty, responsibility, sacrifice, reliability. These forms of affection become deeply important. For many Victorians, actions speak more loudly than emotional declarations. The fire burns quietly. The family settles into the evening. Perhaps someone reads aloud from a book. Perhaps sewing continues beside the lamp. Perhaps letters are written. The pace of life slows. Outside, darkness spreads across the streets. Inside, routines provide comfort. Children prepare for bed. Tomorrow will bring another day shaped by similar expectations. Another day of self-control. Another day of discipline. Another day of quiet endurance. Over many years, these routines help shape adulthood. A child raised in such an environment may become calm under pressure, reliable, responsible, reserved. Yet emotional restraint can also create distance. Some adults find it difficult to express vulnerability. Some struggle to speak openly about fear. Others feel uncomfortable discussing personal emotions at all. The habits learned in childhood remain powerful, even long after childhood has ended. And so, as the city grows quiet once more, we begin to understand how Victorian society slowly influenced emotional behavior. Not through dramatic events, not through sudden changes, but through thousands of ordinary moments. Morning breakfasts, school lessons, workplace expectations, family routines, polite conversations, silent acts of devotion. Each small experience leaves a gentle mark. Together, they create patterns that last across entire lifetimes. The lamps burn lower now. Footsteps become less frequent outside. The streets settle into stillness. A cool night breeze moves between buildings. Most homes are dark. Most families are asleep. And within countless quiet rooms, another generation rests beneath the influence of a culture that values composure, restraint, and duty. The city sleeps. The mist slowly returns. And somewhere beyond the rooftops, a church clock softly marks the passing hour as the long Victorian night continues. The night remains quiet. The city rests beneath a blanket of darkness. A few lamps still glow behind curtains. A few late footsteps drift through distant streets. Somewhere, a horse shifts gently in its stall. Somewhere else, a watchman walks his familiar route beneath the pale light of the moon. Most people, however, are asleep. Inside rows of narrow houses, families lie beneath heavy blankets. The fire has faded to glowing embers. The sounds of the day have disappeared. For a little while, expectations are silent. The rules of society sleep alongside everyone else. Yet when morning returns, those expectations will awaken once more. Long before sunrise, many Victorians begin their day. The first signs are small. A match striking. A kettle placed above a flame. The creak of wooden floorboards. A door opening quietly. The sky outside remains dark blue. The air feels cool against the skin. In working-class neighborhoods, countless families rise before dawn. The day ahead will be long. There is little time to linger in bed. A mother lights a lamp. Its soft glow spreads across the room. She moves carefully so as not to wake everyone at once. Soon breakfast must be prepared. Clothes must be arranged. Children must be dressed. The rhythm of daily life begins again. Victorian society often admired hard work. Industry was praised. Perseverance was praised. Self-discipline was praised. These values reached deeply into family life. Children learned that effort mattered. They learned that responsibilities came before comfort. They learned that adulthood involved endurance. Many adults carried these lessons throughout their lives. To understand emotional quietness in Victorian society, it helps to imagine how often people were expected to place duty ahead of personal feelings. A factory worker might wake exhausted. His body may still ache from the previous day's labor. Yet he rises anyway. A shop assistant may feel anxious about finances. Yet she opens the store as expected. A parent may be grieving a recent loss. Yet household responsibilities continue. The world does not pause. Responsibilities remain. Meals must be cooked. Floors must be swept. Bills must be paid. Children must be cared for. Duty becomes a constant companion. Over time, many people learn to keep moving forward even when emotions feel heavy. This habit can create remarkable strength. It can also encourage silence. As dawn finally arrives, sunlight begins to touch the rooftops. Smoke rises from chimneys. The city awakens once more. Inside a schoolroom, students gather for lessons. The atmosphere is orderly. Books are arranged neatly. Desks stand in rows. The teacher expects attention. Children are encouraged to sit properly, to listen carefully, to follow instructions. The classroom reflects broader social values. Order is considered important. Discipline is considered important. Control is considered important. These lessons extend beyond education itself. A child who learns to remain still for long periods may also learn to suppress visible frustration. A child who learns not to interrupt may also learn to keep certain thoughts private. Gradually, emotional restraint becomes intertwined with good behavior. Many adults later carry these habits into workplaces, marriages, friendships, and parenthood. The process is slow, almost invisible, like water shaping stone over many years. As the morning continues, busy streets fill with movement. Men walk toward offices and factories. Women manage households, shops, workshops, and countless responsibilities that often receive little recognition. Children hurry between errands and lessons. Everywhere there are routines, predictable patterns, familiar expectations. Victorian life often depended upon reputation. People paid close attention to how others behaved. Neighbors observed one another. Employers evaluated character. Communities discussed conduct. A person's reputation could influence opportunities, friendships, and social standing. Because of this, many people became highly aware of public appearances. Visible self-control carried value. Remaining calm during difficulty could earn respect. Displaying too much emotion could sometimes invite criticism. This did not mean everyone agreed. Human beings have always differed from one another. Some Victorians were expressive. Some were reserved. Some challenged social expectations. Others embraced them fully. Yet the broader culture often rewarded emotional restraint. As a result, many individuals adapted accordingly. The afternoon arrives. Sunlight filters through factory windows. Machines continue their steady rhythm. Clerks write carefully in ledgers. Shopkeepers greet customers politely. The pace rarely slows. In many workplaces, professionalism becomes closely linked with emotional control. Workers are expected to remain composed. Frustration is hidden. Worry is hidden. Personal troubles remain private. A young clerk may feel overwhelmed by uncertainty. Perhaps his family struggles financially. Perhaps he fears losing his position. Perhaps he dreams of a different future. Yet throughout the workday, he presents a calm face. His employer values reliability. His co-workers expect steadiness. The habit of composure grows stronger. Year after year. Day after day. Eventually, maintaining emotional distance may feel automatic. Not because feelings disappear, but because concealment becomes familiar. Across the city, countless similar stories unfold. A seamstress sits beside a window, needle moving steadily through fabric. The work requires concentration. Hours pass quietly. Her thoughts may wander. She may remember childhood. She may worry about tomorrow. She may miss someone she loves. Yet outwardly, very little changes. The stitching continues. The routine continues. The silence continues. Victorian emotional life often existed beneath the surface. Like roots hidden beneath soil. Invisible from above. Yet essential to everything growing there. As evening slowly approaches, families gather once again. Children return home. Workers return home. The streets gradually soften. The busiest hours begin to fade. Inside many houses, conversation remains practical. Daily concerns fill the air. School performance. Work responsibilities. Household expenses. Necessary repairs. Tomorrow's plans. Open emotional discussion is not always encouraged. In some families, personal feelings are shared sparingly. Children may not hear adults speak openly about fear. Parents may not discuss sadness in front of the household. Difficult emotions often remain private. This pattern can shape future generations. A child raised in such an environment may grow into an adult who struggles to name emotions. Not because emotions are absent, but because emotional language was rarely practiced. Feelings exist. Words for those feelings may not come easily. Many emotionally quiet adults throughout later generations inherited similar patterns. They learned that strength meant endurance. That love meant responsibility. That concern could be shown through action rather than conversation. These lessons often originated in homes where affection was real but not always spoken aloud. The fire burns warmly in the sitting room. The family settles into another evening. A mother mends clothing. A father reads the newspaper. Children complete lessons. The atmosphere feels peaceful. Yet beneath the calm surface lies an entire emotional world. Hopes. Fears. Dreams. Regrets. Private joys. Private sorrows. All existing quietly alongside ordinary life. Victorian culture often encouraged individuals to become caretakers of their own emotions. Rather than expressing feelings immediately, many learned to manage them internally. This skill could provide stability during hardship. It could help people survive difficult circumstances. But it could also create loneliness. Some burdens became easier to carry together. Others remained hidden for years. The balance between resilience and silence became one of the defining emotional experiences of the age. Outside, rain begins to fall. Soft drops tap against windows. The streets glisten beneath gas lamps. The city grows quieter. People retreat indoors. Curtains are drawn. Doors are locked. Families gather closer to the warmth of the fire. Moments like these often reveal another side of Victorian life. Beneath public restraint, private tenderness frequently flourished. A grandmother tells stories. A parent tucks a child into bed. A husband quietly places another log on the fire so his wife remains warm. A daughter writes a thoughtful letter to a distant relative. Many acts of affection occur without grand declarations. Care appears through routine, through consistency, through small daily sacrifices. The language of love often becomes practical rather than verbal. A packed lunch. A repaired coat. A saved seat beside the fire. A long walk through rain to deliver medicine. These actions communicate feelings that may never be spoken directly. For some families, this approach creates strong bonds. For others, emotional distance remains. Experiences vary greatly from household to household. Yet throughout society, restraint continues to hold significant value. As the evening deepens, shadows lengthen across the room. The fire crackles softly. The newspaper is folded. The sewing is finished. One by one, family members prepare for sleep. The house settles into silence. The routines of another day have ended. Tomorrow will bring similar expectations. More work. More responsibilities. More opportunities to practice self-control. And so the habits continue. Not through force. Not through punishment alone. But through repetition. Through culture. Through observation. Through countless ordinary interactions. The emotional quietness often associated with Victorian adulthood does not emerge suddenly. It develops slowly. Year after year. Conversation after conversation. Lesson after lesson. A lifetime of small influences gathers together. Outside, the rain begins to ease. Clouds drift across the moon. The streets grow still. Only a few distant sounds remain. A carriage wheel. A closing gate. The faint toll of a church bell somewhere beyond the sleeping city. And beneath the calm darkness, another generation rests. Children who will one day become adults. Adults who will one day become parents. Each carrying forward lessons about duty, composure, restraint, and care. Lessons woven gently into everyday life. Lessons that continue shaping emotional habits long after the Victorian age itself has passed into history. The night deepens. The lamps fade. And the city drifts once more into quiet sleep. The night settles more deeply now. Clouds drift slowly above the rooftops. The last sounds of evening have nearly disappeared. Behind darkened windows, thousands of families sleep beneath layers of blankets and quilts. The fires have burned low. The kettles are quiet. The streets belong mostly to the wind. In these still hours, the city seems softer than it does during the day. The factories are silent. The shops are closed. The endless movement of work has paused. For a few brief hours, people rest from the responsibilities that shape so much of their lives. Yet even in sleep, the habits of a culture remain close. The values learned in childhood do not vanish when the eyes close. They settle deep within a person. So deep, in fact, that they often feel like part of human nature itself. Many Victorian adults grew up believing that emotional control was not merely useful. It was respectable. It was admirable. It was evidence of character. And because these beliefs were introduced early, they often felt completely normal. Imagine a young child sitting quietly beside a parent on a winter evening. Outside, cold rain taps gently against the glass. Inside, the room glows with firelight. The child watches the adults nearby. Perhaps no one is giving a formal lesson. No one is delivering a speech. Yet learning is taking place. The child observes how the adults respond to disappointment. How they respond to worry. How they respond to frustration. Perhaps a letter arrives carrying bad news. The adults remain composed. Perhaps money is scarce. The adults discuss it calmly. Perhaps plans change unexpectedly. The adults adapt without outward complaint. The child notices. Children are always watching. Long before they fully understand the world, they observe how adults move through it. They learn not only from instructions but also from examples. Victorian children often absorbed lessons about emotion through daily observation. A father who remained calm during hardship demonstrated one version of strength. A mother who quietly managed endless responsibilities demonstrated another. Over time, these examples became powerful models for adulthood. The child learned that difficult feelings could be carried silently. That worries could remain private. That personal burdens should not always be shared. These lessons did not come from cruelty. In many cases, they came from love. Parents wanted children to become capable adults. They wanted them to survive a demanding world. Life during the 19th century could be uncertain. Economic troubles appeared suddenly. Illness remained common. Many families lived close to hardship. Resilience mattered. Endurance mattered. The ability to continue despite discomfort mattered. Emotional control became linked to survival itself. As dawn slowly approaches once again, pale light begins to spread across the horizon. The city stirs. A few early workers begin moving through the streets. Their footsteps echo softly. A baker prepares dough before sunrise. A milk delivery starts its route. A chimney sweep begins another day. Routine returns. Victorian society often operated according to clearly defined expectations. People understood their roles. Parents had responsibilities. Children had responsibilities. Employers had responsibilities. Workers had responsibilities. These roles provided structure. They offered predictability. Yet they also encouraged emotional discipline. Many people believed that personal feelings should not interfere with duty. A teacher must teach. A worker must work. A parent must care for children. Responsibilities came first. Emotion often followed quietly behind. This mindset appeared in countless ordinary situations. A woman might feel exhausted after weeks of caring for a sick family member. Yet she continues preparing meals, cleaning rooms, managing household tasks. Visitors may never see her fatigue. A man might carry private worries about employment. Yet he arrives at work every morning appearing steady and reliable. Co-workers may never know his concerns. These examples repeat across thousands of lives. Again and again. The habit becomes familiar. Eventually, emotional quietness begins to feel natural. As morning advances, the city grows busier. Market stalls open. Carriages move through crowded streets. Factory whistles signal the beginning of shifts. Life unfolds according to patterns repeated day after day. Among these routines, there is another important influence shaping Victorian emotional behavior: the idea of self-improvement. Many people believed strongly in personal discipline. Books offering advice became popular. Articles discussed character and conduct. Parents encouraged children to develop good habits. Self-control was often presented as a path toward becoming a better person. This idea carried enormous influence. People were encouraged to manage impulses, control anger, avoid excessive displays of emotion, remain patient, remain respectable, remain composed. Such advice was not always easy to follow. Human emotions rarely cooperate perfectly. People became angry. People became frightened. People became heartbroken. Yet the ideal remained powerful. And because the ideal remained powerful, many individuals judged themselves harshly when emotions became difficult to control. Imagine a young man experiencing grief after losing someone dear to him. His sadness feels overwhelming. Yet he believes he should remain strong. He believes he should continue fulfilling responsibilities. He may share little of his pain with others. Instead, he carries it quietly. Perhaps he writes in a journal. Perhaps he walks alone in the evening. Perhaps he says very little at all. From the outside, observers may see only composure. The deeper emotional experience remains hidden. This pattern appears often in Victorian letters and personal writings. Beneath calm language, deep feelings frequently existed. Affection, longing, sorrow, devotion. The emotional world was rich. The public expression of that world was often limited. As the afternoon sun reaches its highest point, warmth spreads across brick walls and narrow streets. Workers continue their tasks. Clerks record numbers in neat handwriting. Seamstresses focus on careful stitches. Shopkeepers greet customers politely. Everywhere there is effort. Everywhere there is routine. Victorian society admired consistency. People who remained dependable earned respect. Dependability often required emotional regulation. One could not allow every frustration to become visible. One could not allow every disappointment to interrupt daily responsibilities. This expectation shaped adulthood in profound ways. Many people became skilled at maintaining calm appearances. They learned to function even when struggling internally. Some found genuine strength through this process. Others felt isolated. Both experiences could exist simultaneously. As shadows begin to lengthen, attention turns once again toward home. The workday slowly ends. Families reunite. Doors open. Coats are removed. Meals are prepared. The familiar rhythm of evening returns. For many Victorian families, home served as a refuge from public life. Yet even within the home, emotional habits remained. Parents who had been raised with restraint often passed those same habits to children. Not intentionally. Not through formal instruction. Simply through daily example. A father who rarely discussed feelings raised sons and daughters who learned similar patterns. A mother who expressed care primarily through actions taught children to recognize affection in practical forms. The cycle continued naturally. Generation after generation. In some households, emotional conversations remained rare. In others, they occurred privately and carefully. Every family differed. Yet broad cultural expectations continued exerting influence. The evening meal concludes. Plates are cleared. The fire burns steadily. The room glows with warm light. Outside, darkness slowly gathers. A young girl sits quietly reading. A boy completes schoolwork at a small table. Parents discuss tomorrow's responsibilities. The atmosphere feels calm, orderly, predictable. There is comfort in routine. Victorian life often depended upon routine. Routine created stability in an uncertain world. Routine provided structure during difficult times. Routine offered reassurance. and routine frequently encouraged emotional control. When every day follows familiar patterns, strong emotions can be tucked neatly into the spaces between responsibilities. Not eliminated, simply managed, contained, carried forward. As the night deepens once more, many families gather around the fire before bed. Stories may be shared. Books may be read aloud. Needles move quietly through fabric. The clock marks each passing hour. These peaceful scenes reveal something important. Victorian emotional restraint did not necessarily mean emotional coldness. The two are not always the same. Many people cared deeply for one another. Many loved deeply. Many sacrificed enormously for family and friends. Yet affection was often communicated differently than it is in some other times and places. Care appeared through reliability, through service, through duty fulfilled faithfully year after year. A parent working long hours. A spouse managing household burdens. A sibling offering practical help during illness. These actions carried emotional meaning. Sometimes enormous emotional meaning. Words remained few. Actions spoke quietly. As bedtime approaches, children climb stairs. Candles flicker. Doors close softly. The house gradually falls silent. One by one, family members retreat into sleep. The city outside grows still. The moon rises higher above rooftops and chimneys. And somewhere in the darkness, another child lies awake for a moment before drifting to sleep. Listening to distant sounds. Feeling safe beneath familiar blankets. Unaware that countless small experiences are already shaping the adult they will someday become. An adult who may value responsibility. An adult who may struggle to express vulnerability. An adult who may show love through dependable actions. An adult who may carry emotions quietly beneath a composed surface. The lessons are still being learned. The story is still unfolding. And across the sleeping Victorian city, beneath moonlight and mist, the gentle shaping of emotional habits continues through another peaceful night. The moon hangs quietly above the city. Its pale light rests upon rooftops darkened by soot and years of weather. Chimneys rise like silent shapes against the night sky. Narrow streets wind between rows of brick homes where families sleep behind curtains and closed doors. The air feels cool now. A faint breeze drifts through alleyways. Somewhere far away, a clock softly strikes the hour. The sound travels through the darkness before fading once more into silence. Most of the city is asleep. Yet even in these peaceful hours, countless stories rest behind every window. Stories of workers. Stories of parents. Stories of children learning how to become adults. Stories of emotions carried quietly through ordinary lives. As the night slowly passes, let us step into one of these homes. It is not large. The rooms are simple. The furniture has been used for many years. A small fire has nearly gone out in the hearth. The family sleeps upstairs beneath thick blankets. The father lies exhausted after a long day of labor. The mother rests after countless hours spent managing the household. The children dream quietly. Tomorrow morning, the familiar routines will begin again. The same rhythms. The same expectations. The same lessons, repeated so gently that they almost disappear into everyday life. And perhaps that is one reason Victorian emotional habits became so powerful. They were rarely taught through dramatic moments. They emerged through repetition. The lessons arrived in ordinary conversations. Ordinary mornings. Ordinary evenings. Day after day. Year after year. Like water flowing over stone. slowly shaping it. A child might hear a parent say, "Be brave." A teacher might encourage patience. A relative might praise calm behavior. A neighbor might admire someone for remaining composed during difficulty. Each message seems small, yet together they create a larger picture. A picture of adulthood built around self-control. As dawn begins its slow return, darkness softens at the edges. The eastern horizon grows pale. The city prepares to awaken. Inside homes across the streets, people begin stirring beneath blankets. Some wake immediately. Others linger for a few moments in the comfort of sleep. Soon, however, responsibilities call. The day must begin. A woman rises quietly and lights a lamp. Its warm glow spreads across the room. She moves carefully through familiar tasks. Coal is added to the fire. Water is prepared. Breakfast must be organized. The household depends upon routine. Many Victorian adults spent much of their lives caring for others. Their work was often constant. Meals, laundry, cleaning, childcare, shopping, mending clothing, managing countless details. These responsibilities rarely disappeared. Because of this, many people learned to continue functioning regardless of mood. Whether tired or energetic, whether worried or hopeful, the work remained. The family remained. The responsibilities remained. Over time, emotional endurance became part of daily life. This endurance often appeared admirable. And in many ways, it truly was. Families survived difficult circumstances because people remained dependable. Communities functioned because individuals fulfilled obligations. Yet emotional endurance sometimes came with hidden costs. Some people became so practiced at carrying burdens that they found it difficult to ask for help. Some learned to conceal distress so effectively that even those closest to them could not always see it. A person might appear calm while carrying great sadness. Another might appear strong while feeling deeply lonely. These experiences existed quietly beneath the surface of Victorian society. As sunlight begins to fill the streets, workers emerge from their homes. The city becomes busy once more. Horse-drawn carts move along cobblestones. Shopkeepers prepare displays. Children hurry toward school. The familiar sounds of daily life return. Amid all this activity, there exists a powerful social force. Expectation. Not necessarily written rules. Not laws. Not commands. Something softer. Something harder to see. People often behaved according to what they believed others expected. This influence touched nearly every area of life. How one dressed. How one spoke. How one behaved in public. How one responded to success. How one responded to failure. And especially how one displayed emotion. Victorian society often admired composure. A calm person appeared trustworthy. A disciplined person appeared respectable. Someone who controlled strong emotions demonstrated maturity. These ideas became woven into everyday interactions. A young employee hopes to impress an employer. A child hopes to earn praise from parents. A family hopes to maintain a good reputation. Again and again, emotional restraint receives approval. Again and again, people adapt accordingly. By afternoon, sunlight warms the city. Shadows shorten. Work continues. Inside offices, clerks sit at rows of desks. Pens scratch across paper. Numbers fill ledgers. Hours pass steadily. The work requires concentration, patience, Attention to detail. Many workplaces valued these qualities highly. Emotional displays were often viewed as distractions. Professional behavior meant remaining composed. Even under pressure. Even during frustration. These expectations influenced countless adults. A person might spend decades practicing calmness in public settings. Decades learning to conceal irritation. Decades learning to present stability. Eventually, these behaviors could become second nature. Not something performed consciously. Simply the way one moved through the world. At the same time, private emotional lives continued to exist. Rich. Complex. Deeply human. Letters exchanged between friends often contained affection and concern. Family correspondence sometimes revealed tenderness hidden from public view. Personal journals occasionally preserved thoughts never spoken aloud. These private records remind us that Victorian people felt emotions just as deeply as anyone else. Their challenge was not feeling. Their challenge was expression. How much should be shown? When should it be shown? To whom should it be shown? Such questions lingered throughout daily life. As evening approaches, workers begin returning home. The pace of the city slows. The workday fades. Families gather once more around tables and fireplaces. The atmosphere shifts. The public world gives way to the private world. Yet the boundary between the two is not always clear. Adults who have practiced emotional restraint all day often continue practicing it at home. Habits do not disappear when one crosses a doorway. A father may worry about finances. Yet he speaks little of it. A mother may feel overwhelmed. Yet she continues caring for everyone around her. Children observe these behaviors carefully. Without realizing it, they absorb lessons about adulthood. One day they will repeat many of the same patterns. The evening meal is simple. Conversation remains polite. Practical matters receive attention. The household moves through familiar routines. Outside, gas lamps begin to glow. Golden circles of light appear along the streets. The sky deepens into shades of blue and gray. A calm feeling settles over the neighborhood. After supper, family members occupy themselves with quiet activities. Reading. Sewing. Writing letters. Repairing clothing. Preparing for tomorrow. The atmosphere feels peaceful. There is comfort in shared space. Comfort in familiar voices. Comfort in routine. And yet, beneath the calm surface, emotions continue flowing quietly. Perhaps a young woman dreams of opportunities beyond her current circumstances. Perhaps an elderly grandparent reflects upon years already past. Perhaps a child worries about school. Perhaps someone misses a family member living far away. These feelings remain present. But often they remain private. The Victorian world developed many ways of expressing emotion indirectly. A carefully written letter. A meaningful gift. A pressed flower kept inside a book. A photograph treasured for years. A lock of hair preserved as a keepsake. Such objects often carried deep emotional significance. They allowed feelings to be communicated gently, quietly, without requiring dramatic conversation. Many people found comfort in these forms of expression. They provided connection while still honoring cultural expectations of restraint. The evening grows later. The fire burns lower. One by one, family members prepare for sleep. Candles flicker softly. Doors close. Footsteps fade. The house settles into silence. Outside, the city becomes quiet once more. The streets empty. The lamps glow steadily. Clouds drift slowly across the sky. Another day has passed. Another day of work. Another day of responsibilities. Another day of emotions carried with dignity and care. And within countless homes across the Victorian world, children continue learning what adulthood looks like. Not through lectures. Not through grand events. But through observation. Through repetition. Through thousands of ordinary moments. Moments that teach patience. Moments that teach endurance. Moments that teach composure. Lessons that will remain long after childhood ends. The moon rises higher. The city sleeps. And in the peaceful darkness, the quiet shaping of another generation continues beneath the watchful silence of the Victorian night. The city sleeps beneath a veil of mist. The rooftops are silver in the moonlight. Rows of chimneys stand quietly against the sky. A cool breeze moves through narrow streets that only hours ago were crowded with workers, merchants, children, and carts. Now there is stillness. The sounds of labor have faded. The sounds of conversation have faded. Even the horses seem to rest. Only an occasional footstep echoes in the distance before disappearing once more into the night. In this calm darkness, it becomes easier to imagine the countless lives that quietly unfolded during the Victorian age. Not the lives recorded in grand portraits. Not the lives remembered through monuments. But the ordinary lives. The lives spent in kitchens and workshops. The lives spent in schools and factories. The lives spent caring for families and carrying responsibilities. And it is within these ordinary lives that many emotional habits were formed. As midnight passes and the city remains asleep, let us linger for a moment inside one modest home. The house is small but carefully maintained. The furniture is simple. A clock rests upon the mantel. The fire has become a bed of glowing embers. Upstairs, a child stirs briefly in sleep. Then grows still once more. Tomorrow will bring another day of learning. Another day of observation. Another day of absorbing the invisible rules of the world around them. Children are remarkably sensitive to atmosphere. Long before they understand social expectations, they feel them. They notice which emotions receive approval. They notice which emotions create discomfort. They notice when adults grow silent. They notice when certain topics are avoided. Without realizing it, they begin adapting. Imagine a young boy returning home after a difficult day at school. Perhaps another student mocked him. Perhaps he failed an examination. Perhaps he feels embarrassed or disappointed. He enters the house carrying these feelings. What happens next matters. If the adults around him respond with calm encouragement, he learns one lesson. If they encourage him to remain strong and move forward, he learns another. If they themselves rarely speak about personal struggles, he learns something else entirely. Over years, thousands of similar experiences slowly shape emotional behavior. Rarely through a single event. Almost always through accumulation. Like layers of dust settling upon a shelf. One layer may seem insignificant. 1,000 layers create something noticeable. As the first hints of dawn approach, the darkness begins to soften. A pale gray glow appears far beyond the city. Morning is still distant. Yet it is coming. Soon the familiar cycle will begin again. Across Victorian society, routine played an enormous role in daily life. Many people followed schedules that changed very little from one day to the next. They woke at similar hours. Worked similar hours. Returned home at similar hours. Repeated familiar responsibilities. Routine provided stability. and stability often reinforced emotional habits. When life follows predictable patterns, there is less opportunity to pause and examine feelings. The day demands attention. Tasks require completion. Responsibilities move steadily forward. Many adults learn to place emotional reflection aside until later. Sometimes much later. As sunrise finally arrives, activity slowly returns to the streets. A baker begins preparing bread. The smell of fresh loaves drifts into the cool morning air. Coal fires are lit. Shop shutters open. The city awakens. Within homes, families gather for breakfast. Conversations are often practical. Plans for the day. Work assignments. Household concerns. Necessary errands. Victorian culture frequently encouraged usefulness. A useful person contributed. A useful person worked hard. A useful person remained dependable. These qualities earned admiration. As a result, many people measured themselves according to what they accomplished rather than what they felt. Identity became closely connected to responsibility. A father's worth might be linked to providing for his family. A mother's worth might be linked to caring for the household. A student's worth might be linked to diligence and obedience. The emphasis on responsibility created strong communities in many ways. Yet it also encouraged some individuals to ignore their own emotional needs. If duty always comes first, personal struggles can become difficult to acknowledge. A person may tell themselves there is no time to be sad. No time to feel overwhelmed. No time to speak about loneliness. There is work to do. There are obligations waiting. And so emotions are quietly carried forward. As morning becomes afternoon, the city grows busy. Crowds fill the streets. Workshops hum with activity. Factories operate at full pace. Inside offices, rows of clerks sit beneath tall windows. Pens move steadily across paper. Hour after hour. Day after day. For many Victorian adults, public life required careful self-presentation. One's appearance mattered. One's conduct mattered. One's reputation mattered. People often became highly skilled at managing how others perceived them. This skill extended naturally into emotional behavior. A person might feel anxious while appearing calm. A person might feel grief while appearing composed. A person might feel uncertainty while appearing confident. The public face and the private self sometimes became separate things. Not entirely separate, but distinct enough that others could rarely see the full picture. This separation was not always intentional. Sometimes it emerged naturally from years of practice. Children who learned early to control visible emotions often became adults who did the same automatically. By evening, the city begins slowing once more. The sunlight fades from brick walls. Long shadows stretch across streets. Families return home. Doors open and close. The atmosphere becomes softer, warmer, more intimate. Yet even in private spaces, Victorian emotional culture remained influential. Many parents genuinely loved their children deeply. The evidence appears throughout letters, journals, and family records. Yet expressions of affection often look different than many people might expect. Love frequently appeared through sacrifice, through protection, through responsibility, through effort. A father might work exhausting hours for years because he loves his family. A mother might spend every waking moment caring for children because she loves them. Neither may speak openly about emotions very often. The love remains real. The expression simply takes a different form. Children raised in such environments learn important lessons. They learn that care is shown through actions. They learn that devotion can be quiet. They learn that reliability carries emotional meaning. These lessons often stay with them throughout adulthood. Many emotionally reserved adults later express affection in similar ways. They help. They provide. They protect. They show up when needed. Yet they may struggle to speak openly about feelings. Not because they do not care. Because caring has always been demonstrated through action. The evening deepens. The fire glows warmly. Family members gather together in the sitting room. A book may be read aloud. Needles move through fabric. The clock ticks steadily. These peaceful domestic scenes played an important role in Victorian life. Home offered refuge from the demands of the outside world. Yet even here, emotional restraint remained woven into daily interactions. A child might feel disappointed. A parent encourages patience. A sibling becomes upset. Another reminds them to remain calm. Small moments. Repeated endlessly. Each reinforcing familiar expectations. As darkness settles fully over the city, the lamps are lit. Golden light spills across walls and ceilings. Outside, the streets grow quieter. Inside, families prepare for another night. Some write letters before bed. Letter writing occupied an important place in Victorian society. Many people expressed emotions more comfortably through writing than through direct conversation. A carefully composed letter allowed time for reflection. Time to choose words carefully. Time to reveal feelings gradually. The written page became a private space where emotions could breathe. Love. Gratitude. Concern. Longing. Regret. All could be communicated gently through ink and paper. These letters remind us that emotional restraint never meant emotional absence. The feelings were always there. Sometimes hidden. Sometimes softened. Sometimes expressed through indirect means. But always present. The night grows deeper. One by one, candles are extinguished. The house becomes dark. The city becomes quiet. Above the rooftops, stars emerge between drifting clouds. Their light is faint but steady. Much like the countless acts of quiet care that filled Victorian life. Not dramatic. Not loud. Simply constant. A parent waking before dawn every morning. A worker returning home faithfully each evening. A family member tending to someone who is ill. A friend writing a thoughtful letter. These small acts formed the emotional fabric of daily life. And through them, generation after generation learned what adulthood looked like. Adulthood meant responsibility. Adulthood meant endurance. Adulthood meant composure. Adulthood meant carrying certain feelings quietly while continuing to fulfill obligations. These lessons would echo far beyond the Victorian era itself. Passed from parents to children. From children to grandchildren. Moving forward through time almost unnoticed. The city settles deeper into sleep. The wind softens. The moon drifts above silent streets. And within countless darkened homes, another generation rests beneath the gentle influence of habits, expectations, and quiet examples that continue shaping emotional lives long into the future. The night remains calm. A thin layer of mist drifts slowly between the rows of houses. The lamps along the street burn softly, their light glowing like small golden islands in the darkness. Far above, clouds move lazily across the sky, revealing a few scattered stars. The city is resting. For a little while, the endless routines of the day have paused. The ledgers are closed. The shops are dark. The factory machines stand still. The classrooms are empty. Even the busiest minds have finally surrendered to sleep. Yet beneath the quiet roofs and behind the darkened windows, countless lives continue their silent journey through time. Some dream peacefully. Some dream uneasily. Some sleep deeply after exhausting days of labor. Others lie awake for a while, listening to the wind and thinking about tomorrow. Such moments have always belonged to humanity. Even in a culture that valued restraint, people still carried private hopes and private worries into the night. Perhaps nowhere was Victorian emotional life more visible than in the gap between public behavior and private thought. During the day, expectations surrounded people from every direction. At work, there were standards to maintain. At school, rules to follow. In public spaces, appearances to protect. Yet when a person found themselves alone, perhaps sitting quietly beside a fading fire, another world often emerged. A world of reflection. A world of memory. A world of feeling. Imagine a middle-aged father sitting in a chair late in the evening. The household has gone to bed. The room is quiet except for the occasional crackle of the fire. He stares into the glowing coals. His face is calm. Anyone observing him might assume there is little on his mind. Yet inside, thoughts move slowly through memory. He thinks about his children. He thinks about responsibilities. He thinks about years already past. Perhaps he worries about the future. Perhaps he remembers his own parents. Perhaps he feels pride. Perhaps he feels regret. The emotions exist. They simply remain hidden from view. Victorian culture often encouraged people to become careful guardians of their inner worlds. Many individuals learned to keep feelings private unless there was a strong reason to reveal them. This habit could create dignity. It could create resilience. It could also create loneliness. Human beings often need understanding from others. They need opportunities to speak honestly. When emotional expression becomes limited, some feelings remain trapped inside. Not because anyone intends harm. Simply because habits become deeply rooted. As dawn begins approaching once more, the darkness gradually retreats. The city prepares for another day. A rooster calls somewhere beyond the crowded streets. The first chimney smoke rises into the cool air. A few windows glow with early candlelight. Soon, thousands of people will begin moving through familiar routines once again. A young girl wakes and dresses for school. She smooths her clothes carefully. Presentation matters. Good manners matter. Proper behavior matters. Throughout childhood, she receives countless messages about composure. Adults praise politeness. Teachers praise patience. Relatives praise self-control. None of these qualities are harmful on their own. In fact, many are valuable. The challenge comes when emotional expression and emotional understanding receive less attention. A child can learn how to behave appropriately without fully learning how to discuss sadness, fear, frustration, or uncertainty. This imbalance sometimes follows people into adulthood. As the morning advances, the streets fill with movement. The city breathes back into life. Carriages rattle over cobblestones. Shopkeepers sweep sidewalks. Workers move steadily toward their jobs. Children hurry toward classrooms. The rhythm feels familiar. Comfortingly familiar. Victorian society often found reassurance in order. Order created predictability. Predictability created stability. Stability helped people navigate a rapidly changing world. The 19th century brought enormous transformation. Railways expanded. Cities grew larger. Industries developed. Technology advanced. For many people, these changes arrived quickly. The world they inherited looked different from the world they passed to their children. During periods of change, social rules often provide a sense of security. Clear expectations help people understand their place within society. Emotional restraint became one of these expectations. It offered a framework. A way to maintain dignity amid uncertainty. A way to remain steady when circumstances felt unstable. As noon approaches, sunlight reflects from windows and rooftops. Inside offices, work continues. Inside workshops, hands remain busy. Inside homes, countless tasks require attention. Everywhere there are responsibilities. Everywhere there are obligations. And everywhere there are people quietly managing emotions while carrying out those obligations. A young woman may feel nervous about an upcoming life decision. Yet she continues with her duties. An older man may carry grief from years earlier. Yet he continues with his duties. A child may feel frightened about school examinations. Yet they continue with lessons. Again and again, Victorian life rewards perseverance. The ability to continue despite discomfort becomes highly respected. Many emotionally quiet adults develop precisely this skill. They learn how to keep moving forward. They learn how to function during difficult periods. They learn how to fulfill responsibilities even when emotions feel heavy. These abilities can become sources of genuine strength. Many families survived hardship because someone remained dependable during difficult times. Many communities remained stable because individuals continued helping one another despite personal struggles. Yet strength and silence often travel together. The same habits that create resilience can sometimes make vulnerability difficult. As afternoon slowly gives way to evening, shadows lengthen across the city. Workers begin returning home. School children gather their belongings. The pace of the day softens. A sense of relief spreads quietly through neighborhoods. Home waits at the end of the road. Warm meals. Familiar faces. The comfort of routine. Inside one home, a family gathers around a supper table. Conversation remains polite. Measured. Respectful. Everyone understands the unwritten rules. Interrupting is discouraged. Outbursts are discouraged. Certain topics may be avoided altogether. The atmosphere feels orderly. Comfortable, even. Yet beneath the surface, each person carries thoughts and feelings known only to themselves. The father worries about expenses. The mother worries about a relative's health. One child hopes for approval at school. Another fears disappointing a teacher. The emotions remain mostly unspoken. Not because they are unimportant. Because the culture has taught everyone to carry them quietly. After supper, the family spends time together. The fire burns steadily. A book is opened. Someone sews beside the lamp. The room glows with warm light. These peaceful evenings become important classrooms of emotional learning. Children observe how adults respond to stress. They observe how disagreements are handled. They observe how affection is expressed. A father may place a blanket over a sleeping child. A mother may save the best portion of food for a family member. A grandparent may quietly repair a broken toy. Love appears through action. Again and again. The lesson becomes familiar. Care means doing. Care means helping. Care means providing. Words are welcome, but actions carry greater weight. For many children, these lessons become permanent. Years later, they will show affection in similar ways. They will solve problems. Offer assistance. Remain dependable. Protect loved ones. And sometimes they will struggle to say what they feel. Not because they lack emotion. Because their earliest examples taught them that love is demonstrated rather than discussed. The evening deepens. Outside, rain begins to fall gently upon the streets. The sound is soft. Almost musical. Water glistens beneath gas lamps. The city grows quieter. Families draw closer to their fires. Curtains are closed against the weather. The atmosphere becomes warm and sheltered. Rainy evenings often encouraged reflection. The outside world faded into darkness. The inside world grew more important. People read, wrote letters, thought about the future, remembered the past. Within these private moments, emotions often found room to breathe. Not loudly, not dramatically, simply quietly, like the rain itself. Steady, persistent, present. As bedtime approaches, candles burn lower. Books are closed. The household prepares for sleep. One by one, family members climb the stairs. The rooms grow silent. The fire settles into glowing embers. Outside, the rain continues falling softly. Another day has ended. Another day of work. Another day of expectations. Another day of quiet lessons passed from one generation to the next. Lessons about responsibility. Lessons about dignity. Lessons about endurance. Lessons about keeping certain feelings carefully tucked away beneath calm expressions. The city drifts back toward sleep. The rain whispers against windows. The mist returns to the streets. And beneath the peaceful darkness of the Victorian night, countless hearts continue carrying their hopes, worries, dreams, and affections quietly forward into another tomorrow. The rain continues through the night. Soft drops gather along window panes and slide slowly downward. Gutters carry small streams of water along the edges of the street. The gas lamps glow through the mist, their light blurred into gentle circles of gold. The city feels distant now. Muted. Wrapped in darkness and rain. Most homes have fallen completely silent. The last conversations ended hours ago. The last candles have been extinguished. The last footsteps have faded from the streets. Only the weather remains awake. And beneath that steady rhythm of rain, thousands of people sleep while another chapter of ordinary Victorian life quietly passes into history. In many ways, the Victorian world was built upon habits. Morning habits. Work habits. Family habits. Social habits. Entire lives were shaped by routines repeated so often that they became nearly invisible. People rarely stopped to question them. They simply felt normal, natural, expected. And among these habits was a particular relationship with emotion. Not the absence of emotion. Not a lack of feeling. But a habit of management. A habit of containment. A habit of carrying feelings carefully rather than displaying them freely. As the night moves forward, let us imagine a young boy sleeping in a small bedroom beneath the roof of a family home. His room is simple. A narrow bed. A small washstand. A few treasured possessions. Outside, rain taps gently against the roof. Inside, the room is warm beneath heavy blankets. Tomorrow, he will wake and begin another ordinary day. He does not know it yet, but nearly every part of that day will help shape the adult he will eventually become. Children learn constantly. Not only in classrooms. Not only from books. They learn from watching. From listening. from absorbing the atmosphere around them. A child notices how adults react when plans fail. A child notices how adults react to disappointment. A child notices who speaks openly and who remains silent. These observations become quiet lessons. Over time, they form expectations. And expectations slowly become habits. By dawn, the rain has nearly stopped. The clouds begin to thin. A pale gray light spreads across the sky. The city stirs once more. Chimneys release thin ribbons of smoke. Doors open. Footsteps return to the sidewalks. A new day begins. Inside countless homes, breakfast is prepared. The smell of toast drifts through kitchens. Tea is poured into cups. The familiar rhythm of family life resumes. For many Victorian households, mornings were busy and purposeful. There was little time for lingering. School awaited. Work awaited. Responsibilities awaited. The day moved forward with steady determination. In such an environment, practicality often took priority. A child who arrived upset at the breakfast table might receive comfort. But they might also receive encouragement to continue with the day. A parent might gently remind them of obligations, lessons, work, responsibilities. This approach reflected broader cultural values. Feelings mattered. Yet responsibilities often came first. Again and again, children encountered this message. Not harshly. Not always directly. Simply through the structure of everyday life. As years passed, many internalized the idea that emotional strength meant continuing forward despite discomfort. The city grows busier as the morning advances. Market stalls open. Factory whistles sound. Workers hurry along familiar routes. The streets fill with motion. Inside schools, children settle into lessons. Rows of desks face the teacher. Books are opened. Pens are prepared. Order governs the classroom. Victorian education often emphasized discipline alongside academic learning. Students practiced patience, attention, obedience, self-control. These qualities were considered important for future success. The ability to remain focused despite distraction. The ability to remain calm despite frustration. The ability to complete tasks despite difficulty. Such lessons extended far beyond school walls. Many students carried them into adulthood. Years later, those same individuals would become parents, employers, teachers, and community leaders. And many would pass the same expectations to the next generation. As sunlight reaches the middle of the day, the city hums with activity. Factories operate steadily. Workshops echo with tools and machinery. Offices remain busy. The Victorian world valued productivity. People often defined themselves through work. What they contributed. What they accomplished. How reliably they fulfilled obligations. This emphasis influenced emotional life in subtle ways. When productivity becomes central, emotional struggles can feel inconvenient. A person may believe they should overcome sadness quickly. They may feel guilty for resting. They may hesitate to discuss difficulties. After all, there is work to be done. Tasks to complete. People depending on them. Many emotionally quiet adults inherited precisely this mindset. They learned to prioritize function over expression. To solve problems rather than discuss feelings. To keep moving rather than pause. These habits often emerged from admirable intentions. Responsibility. Commitment. Care for others. Yet they could also leave little room for vulnerability. By late afternoon, shadows stretch across the streets. The city begins slowing once more. Workers return home. Shopkeepers close doors. Families prepare for evening. The transition from public life to private life begins. This transition is important, because while Victorian society encouraged restraint in public, private spaces often revealed a softer side. Not always through conversation. Often through small acts of care. A mother notices a child seems tired and prepares a favorite meal. A father repairs a broken chair so the household remains comfortable. An older sibling helps with lessons. A grandparent tells stories beside the fire. These actions communicate affection. Quietly. Reliably. Without demanding attention. Love often appeared through service. Through sacrifice. Through consistency. Children who grew up surrounded by such examples learned powerful lessons about relationships. They learned that caring means showing up. That caring means helping. That caring means being dependable. These lessons could create deeply loyal adults. Adults willing to support family through hardship. Adults willing to shoulder responsibilities without complaint. Adults who express devotion through actions more readily than words. As evening settles over the city, lamps are lit throughout the neighborhood. Warm light glows through curtains. Smoke rises from chimneys. The streets grow quieter. Inside homes, supper is shared. Conversation remains calm. Practical matters fill much of the discussion. Plans for tomorrow. School progress. Work concerns. Household needs. Many Victorian families valued politeness at the dinner table. Children learned when to speak. How to speak. When to remain silent. Such lessons reinforced broader ideas about emotional control. Listening carefully. Speaking thoughtfully. Avoiding unnecessary conflict. Again and again, composure received approval. After the meal, the household settles into evening routines. Books are opened. Letters are written. Clothing is mended. The fire crackles softly. Outside, darkness gathers. Inside, the atmosphere feels safe. Predictable. Comforting. These quiet evenings formed the emotional foundation of many lives. Not because dramatic conversations occurred. Because ordinary moments accumulated. Night after night. Year after year. The lessons were subtle. A parent remaining calm during difficulty. A family continuing forward after disappointment. A household valuing responsibility and patience. Each example left a small mark. Together, those marks shaped character. As the hour grows late, some family members retire to bed. Others remain awake a little longer. Perhaps a mother sits beside the fire with a letter in her hands. Perhaps a father reviews household expenses. Perhaps an older child dreams about the future. The room is quiet. The firelight flickers gently. In moments like these, private emotions often become more visible. Not to others. To oneself. A person may acknowledge fears they never discuss aloud. They may remember losses. They may reflect on hopes. They may wonder what tomorrow will bring. The inner world remains active even when outward expressions remain calm. This balance between inner feeling and outer composure became a defining feature of many Victorian lives. Neither side fully replaced the other. Emotion remained present. Restraint remained present. Together they created a distinctive emotional culture. A culture that would influence generations long after the 19th century ended. As midnight approaches once again, the city settles into silence. The lamps grow fewer. The streets empty. Clouds drift slowly above the rooftops. A cool breeze returns. The final sounds of the day disappear into the darkness. And across the sleeping city, another generation continues learning what adulthood looks like. Not through grand speeches. Not through dramatic events. But through countless ordinary moments filled with duty, patience, quiet affection, and careful self-control. The lessons continue. The habits deepen. And beneath the peaceful Victorian night, the slow shaping of emotionally quiet adults carries gently onward. The city rests beneath a clear night sky. The rain has passed. The clouds have drifted away. Above the rooftops, countless stars shine softly through the cool darkness. The streets below are almost empty now. A distant carriage rolls slowly across cobblestones before disappearing around a corner. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then grows quiet again. The night feels wide and peaceful. The busy world of daylight seems very far away. In these silent hours, it becomes easier to notice the smaller details of life. The creak of old wooden beams inside a house. The faint ticking of a clock in a hallway. The gentle settling of a building that has stood through many seasons. Such sounds would have been familiar companions to Victorian families. They belong to the ordinary rhythm of home. And home, perhaps more than any other place, played a powerful role in shaping emotional habits. Many children spent their earliest years surrounded by routines that taught stability. Each morning followed familiar patterns. Each evening followed familiar patterns. Meals arrived at expected times. Household responsibilities were clearly understood. Rules were often consistent. The predictability brought comfort. Yet it also reinforced certain expectations about behavior. Children learned when to speak, when to wait, when to listen, when to control impulses. These lessons were not always taught through punishment. Often they were taught through repetition. The same gentle reminders. The same expectations. The same examples. Again and again. Like a path becoming visible after many footsteps have traveled across it. As the night continues, let us imagine a young girl sitting beside a window many years ago. The evening meal has ended. The room is warm from the fire. Outside, darkness covers the street. She watches people passing beneath the gas lamps. Her parents speak quietly nearby. She listens without appearing to listen. Children often do this. They absorb far more than adults realize. The girl hears discussions about work, about family, about responsibilities. She notices how calmly her parents speak. Even when discussing difficulties. Even when discussing worries. She observes that strong emotions are rarely displayed openly. Problems are approached carefully, thoughtfully, with restraint. Without knowing it, she begins learning how adults are expected to behave. Years later, these observations may still influence her choices. When she experiences disappointment, she may remain composed. When she experiences worry, she may keep it private. Not because anyone explicitly demanded it. Because it feels familiar. Because it feels normal. Because it reflects the examples she saw throughout childhood. As dawn slowly approaches once more, a pale glow begins to touch the horizon. The city prepares to wake. Soon fires will be lit. Breakfasts prepared. Doors opened. The familiar cycle will begin again. For many Victorians, life followed a steady rhythm from which there was little escape. Work demanded attention. Families demanded attention. Communities demanded attention. The constant presence of responsibility often left little room for self-exploration. Modern ideas about discussing emotions openly were far less common. Many people focused instead on fulfilling obligations, doing what needed to be done, meeting expectations, continuing forward. A man might spend decades working long hours to support his household. A woman might spend decades caring for children, relatives, and domestic responsibilities. Their days could become filled with tasks from morning until night. Under such conditions, practical concerns often took priority over emotional reflection. The habit of endurance grew stronger. The habit of perseverance grew stronger. The habit of silence sometimes grew stronger as well. Morning sunlight spreads across the city. The streets become active. Shops open their doors. Workers begin their journeys. Children hurry toward lessons. The familiar machinery of Victorian society begins turning once again. Within this world, respectability carried great importance. People cared deeply about reputation. How one behaved in public mattered. How one presented oneself mattered. Communities often formed opinions based upon visible conduct. As a result, emotional restraint became closely connected to social acceptance. Remaining calm during difficulty could earn admiration. Remaining composed during hardship could earn respect. These values were reinforced repeatedly. At school. At work. At church. Within families. Everywhere, people encountered similar messages. The result was not a single set of rules imposed from above. It was a culture. A shared understanding. An atmosphere. Something felt rather than formally declared. As the afternoon arrives, sunlight warms brick walls and narrow streets. Inside workplaces, countless adults continue performing their duties. Some enjoy their work. Others endure it. Many simply accept it as a necessary part of life. Throughout these long hours, emotional control remains useful. A shopkeeper cannot become angry with every difficult customer. A teacher cannot display every frustration. A clerk cannot abandon responsibilities whenever worry appears. Daily life rewards consistency, steadiness, reliability. These qualities become deeply valued. Many emotionally quiet adults emerge from precisely these conditions. They become skilled at functioning under pressure, skilled at maintaining calm appearances, skilled at carrying private concerns while continuing outward responsibilities. Such skills often help them succeed. Yet they can also make emotional openness feel unfamiliar. As evening approaches, workers begin returning home. The city gradually softens. Shadows stretch across the streets. Gas lamps flicker to life one by one. Warm light appears behind windows. The transition from day to night begins. For many families, evening offers a brief opportunity to reconnect. The workday is over. The household gathers. Meals are shared. Stories are exchanged. Yet even here, emotional culture continues shaping interactions. A child who receives praise may be encouraged to remain humble. A child who becomes upset may be encouraged to remain calm. Moderation is often valued. Balance is often valued. Strong displays of emotion may attract attention that many families prefer to avoid. This does not mean emotions are unwelcome. Rather, they are expected to remain measured, contained, managed carefully. The fire crackles softly in the sitting room. The family settles into familiar routines. Someone reads aloud from a book. Someone repairs clothing. Someone writes a letter to a distant relative. The atmosphere feels peaceful. These ordinary evenings become the backdrop against which emotional habits are formed. Not through extraordinary events. Through ordinary ones. 1,000 quiet evenings. 1,000 small interactions. 1,000 examples of patience, duty, and restraint. Over time, these examples shape expectations about adulthood itself. What does it mean to be mature? What does it mean to be responsible? What does it mean to be strong? For many Victorians, the answers often included emotional self-control. Strength meant remaining steady during hardship. Maturity meant managing feelings appropriately. Responsibility meant fulfilling obligations regardless of personal discomfort. These beliefs carried tremendous influence. Even long after the Victorian era ended, echoes of these ideas remained. Parents taught children. Children became parents. Habits traveled across generations. Sometimes unchanged. Sometimes softened. But often recognizable. As the evening deepens, the household grows quieter. One child becomes sleepy. Another finishes reading. The fire burns lower. Outside, the streets become calm. The city prepares for rest. In these peaceful moments, affection often appears in subtle forms. A blanket adjusted over a sleeping child. A warm drink prepared for a tired family member. A lamp left burning until someone returns home safely. Small gestures. Simple gestures. Yet deeply meaningful. Many Victorian adults communicated care through such actions. Love was often practical. Visible in effort. Visible in sacrifice. Visible in reliability. This approach shaped emotional expression for countless people. Some became extraordinarily dependable. Others found it difficult to discuss personal feelings. Many became both at the same time. Human beings are complex. The habits we inherit rarely produce only one result. As bedtime approaches, candles flicker gently throughout the house. Doors close softly. Footsteps move along hallways. One by one, family members disappear into their rooms. The house settles. The city settles. The world becomes quiet once more. Above the rooftops, the stars continue shining. The same stars that watched over generations of Victorian families. Families who loved deeply. Worked tirelessly. Carried responsibilities faithfully. And often expressed emotion through actions more than words. The night grows deeper. The streets fall silent. The clocks continue their steady ticking. And beneath the calm darkness, another generation drifts into sleep, carrying forward lessons about duty, composure, affection, and quiet endurance that have been gently passed from one life to the next for many years. The stars remain overhead as the night stretches onward. A soft breeze moves through the sleeping city. It slips between chimneys, across rooftops, and down into the narrow streets below. The lamps burn steadily in the darkness, their warm glow reflecting faintly on damp stones. Everything feels still. Peaceful. Unhurried. The busy concerns of daylight have retreated for a little while. In homes throughout the city, families sleep beneath thick blankets. The long day has ended. The work is finished. The meals have been eaten. The fires have settled into beds of glowing embers. Only silence remains. And in that silence, another generation rests. Children who are learning, even now, what adulthood will one day look like. The lessons do not stop when school ends. They do not stop when evening arrives. They surround a child constantly. In every room. In every conversation. In every routine. Victorian society was full of examples. Examples of responsibility. Examples of patience. Examples of sacrifice. Examples of emotional restraint. These examples often carried more influence than formal instruction. A child may forget many lessons from a textbook. A child rarely forgets the atmosphere of home. They remember how adults behaved. How adults solved problems. How adults handled disappointment. How adults treated one another. These memories settle quietly into the foundation of personality. As the darkest hours of the night slowly pass, let us imagine another ordinary household. The home belongs to a family of modest means. Nothing inside is luxurious. The furniture is practical. The rooms are small. Yet the house is cared for with pride. Every object has a purpose. Every possession is valued. The family works hard for what they have. Such households were common throughout the Victorian world. Life often required effort from everyone. Parents carried responsibilities. Children carried responsibilities. Even young family members frequently contributed in some way. This environment encouraged maturity at an early age. Children learned that their actions affected others. They learned that cooperation mattered. They learned that reliability mattered. These lessons often strengthened family bonds. Yet they also encouraged emotional self-discipline. When many people depend on one another, there is often pressure to remain dependable regardless of personal feelings. A child may feel upset, but chores still need attention. A parent may feel exhausted, but dinner still needs preparing. A worker may feel discouraged, but tomorrow's shift still begins at the usual hour. Again and again, daily life rewards perseverance. As dawn approaches, a pale silver light begins spreading across the horizon. The city stirs beneath the fading darkness. A few early risers begin moving through the streets. A baker starts another day before sunrise. A laborer prepares for work. A housemaid lights a fire in a cold room. The familiar cycle begins once more. Morning arrives gradually. The rooftops brighten. The sky softens. The sounds of life return. For many Victorians, mornings carried a sense of purpose. The day stretched ahead, filled with tasks and obligations. There was comfort in this predictability. Knowing what was expected brought a feeling of order. And order often felt reassuring. Especially during a century filled with change. The Victorian period witnessed enormous growth and transformation. Cities expanded. Industries developed. Populations increased. Entire communities changed shape. Amid such change, social values offered stability. People looked to familiar expectations for guidance. Those expectations included emotional behavior. A respectable adult remained composed. A respectable adult fulfilled duties. A respectable adult demonstrated self-control. These ideas became woven into everyday life. Not through force. Through repetition. Through approval. Through example. As the morning grows brighter, children fill classrooms across the city. Books open. Lessons begin. Teachers move between rows of desks. Education during this period often emphasized character as much as knowledge. Students were encouraged to develop good habits. Patience. Discipline. Concentration. Obedience. The goal was not simply to create educated adults. It was to create respectable adults. Adults capable of contributing to society. Adults capable of managing themselves. Adults capable of maintaining order. These expectations naturally influenced emotional development. Children learned how to sit quietly, how to wait their turn, how to manage frustration, how to remain focused despite distractions. These are valuable skills. Yet when practiced constantly, they can also encourage emotional reserve. A person becomes accustomed to keeping reactions private, accustomed to maintaining composure, accustomed to placing self-control above self-expression. By midday, sunlight shines brightly across the city. The streets are crowded. Work continues everywhere. The energy of daily life fills the air. Inside a busy office, clerks sit at long desks covered with papers. The work requires accuracy, patience, consistency. Mistakes can create problems. Carelessness can create embarrassment. As a result, workers learn to remain attentive. They learn to remain controlled. Professional behavior becomes closely linked with emotional restraint. The same pattern appears in many occupations. Teachers, shopkeepers, accountants, craftsmen, servants, managers. Again and again, calm behavior earns approval. Again and again, composure becomes a habit. Many adults eventually become so accustomed to emotional control that they rarely notice it. It feels natural, automatic, part of who they are. Yet beneath these calm surfaces, rich emotional lives continue unfolding. People fall in love. People miss distant relatives. People experience heartbreak. People worry about the future. People dream of better circumstances. The emotions remain as deep as ever. Only their expression is shaped by culture. As afternoon slowly turns toward evening, workers begin making their way home. The city changes pace. The hurried energy of the day begins to soften. Families reunite. Meals are prepared. The warmth of home becomes increasingly important. For many Victorians, home represented safety. A place removed from public judgment. A place where one could relax, at least to some degree. Yet emotional habits learned in public often followed people indoors. A father who remained reserved at work might remain reserved at home. A mother who rarely discussed personal worries might continue protecting her family from those worries. The boundary between public and private life was never complete. People carried themselves with them wherever they went. The evening meal brings the family together. The room is warm. The table is modest but welcoming. Conversation flows gently. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Simply comfortably. The children share news from school. Parents discuss household matters. The atmosphere feels steady, predictable, secure. These moments become some of the most important influences in a child's life. Not because they are remarkable. Because they happen repeatedly. Night after night. Year after year. A child learns what adulthood looks like by watching adults live ordinary days. The lessons are subtle. How does a parent respond to disappointment? How does a parent respond to stress? How does a parent show affection? How does a parent manage conflict? The answers shape expectations for years to come. After supper, the family settles beside the fire. The glow of the flames fills the room with soft light. Books are opened. Letters are written. Small tasks are completed before bed. Outside, darkness slowly returns to the city. Inside, the atmosphere feels calm. A quiet sense of belonging settles over the household. These evenings reveal an important truth. Victorian emotional restraint was often accompanied by deep commitment to family. Many people devoted enormous energy to caring for loved ones. They sacrificed comfort, time, resources, opportunities. They worked tirelessly because they cared. The emotional language of the era often appeared through responsibility rather than declaration. Love became visible through actions, through consistency, through presence. A parent waking before dawn every day. A spouse remaining loyal through hardship. A sibling offering help without being asked. Such acts carried profound emotional meaning. As the night deepens once more, candles burn lower. The household prepares for sleep. The day's routines come to an end. Children climb the stairs. Parents secure doors and windows. The fire settles into glowing coals. Soon the house becomes quiet. Outside, the city drifts toward silence. The streets empty. The lamps glow softly. The stars return overhead. And beneath those stars, another day of small lessons has passed. Lessons about patience. Lessons about duty. Lessons about care. Lessons about composure. Lessons carried gently from one generation to the next. The city sleeps. The clocks continue their steady rhythm. And the long, quiet story of emotionally reserved Victorian adulthood continues unfolding beneath the peaceful night sky. The city sleeps beneath a blanket of quiet darkness. The rooftops rest under the pale glow of the moon. Chimneys stand motionless. Windows reflect faint traces of starlight. The streets, so busy only hours before, now belong to silence and shadow. A gentle wind moves through the narrow lanes. It brushes against brick walls worn smooth by decades of weather. It rattles a loose shutter somewhere in the distance. It carries with it the cool scent of night air and damp stone. Most people never hear these sounds. They are asleep, dreaming, resting before another day of work and responsibility. And so the Victorian city breathes quietly beneath the stars. In many homes, several generations sleep under the same roof. Parents, children, perhaps a grandparent, perhaps a relative staying temporarily with the family. The house is more than a building. It is a small world. A place where habits are learned, where values are passed down, where emotional patterns quietly take root. Much of what children learned about feelings came not from formal instruction, but from observation. A child watched how adults reacted to disappointment. A child watched how adults responded to success. A child watched how adults handled fear, grief, frustration, and uncertainty. These observations became invisible lessons. And invisible lessons are often the most powerful. As the deepest part of night passes, let us imagine an elderly grandmother sleeping peacefully in a small room at the back of a house. She has lived through many decades. She remembers a different city, different streets, different faces. She has seen children grow into adults. She has seen loved ones come and go. She has known happiness. She has known sorrow. Yet through all those years, she has learned to carry herself with quiet dignity. Many older Victorians became examples of emotional endurance. Younger generations watched them carefully. A grandparent who remained calm during hardship inspired admiration. A grandparent who rarely complained despite difficulties became a model of strength. These examples carried tremendous influence. The lessons were rarely spoken aloud. They were demonstrated through daily life. Again and again. Year after year. As dawn slowly approaches, darkness begins retreating from the edges of the sky. The city remains mostly silent. Yet small signs of morning appear. A distant door opens. A chimney begins releasing smoke. Somewhere, a kettle is placed over a fire. The new day begins gently. Without hurry. Without fanfare. The Victorian morning often arrived with purpose. People understood what was expected of them. The routines were familiar. The responsibilities were familiar. The day unfolded according to patterns repeated countless times before. Many emotionally quiet adults emerged from these structured environments. Structure encouraged self-control. Predictability encouraged discipline. People learned how to organize themselves around obligations. The ability to remain steady became a valuable skill. Especially during periods of uncertainty. Life could be fragile. Illness remained common. Economic difficulties could appear unexpectedly. Families sometimes faced challenges with very little warning. Under such conditions, emotional steadiness provided reassurance. Children looked to adults for signs of safety. When adults remained calm, children often felt protected. As a result, many parents believed it was important to manage visible emotions carefully. Not because they lacked feelings. Because they wanted to provide stability. A worried parent might hide anxiety from their children. A grieving parent might continue household routines despite heartbreak. A struggling parent might maintain a calm voice even during difficult times. These choices were often acts of love. Yet they also taught children that strong emotions should sometimes remain private. The morning sunlight spread slowly across the city. Golden light touches rooftops and windows. The streets begin filling with activity. Workers head toward factories and offices. Shopkeepers prepare for customers. School children gather books and begin their journeys. The city awakens fully. Inside classrooms, another generation continues learning. Not only arithmetic. Not only reading. Not only history. They also learn behavior. How to wait patiently. How to listen attentively. How to remain composed. How to function within a structured environment. Teachers often valued discipline highly. A calm classroom was considered a successful classroom. Students learned to regulate themselves. To control impulses. To maintain focus. These habits served many people well throughout adulthood. They helped individuals succeed in workplaces and communities. Yet they also contributed to a culture where emotional expression was frequently measured and restrained. As midday approaches, the city becomes increasingly busy. The sound of footsteps fills the sidewalks. Carts roll over cobblestones. Voices drip from open shop doors. Work continues everywhere. For many adults, daily life involved balancing personal emotions with public expectations. A person might wake feeling worried. Yet they still needed to perform duties. A person might feel lonely. Yet they still needed to appear professional. A person might feel overwhelmed. Yet they still needed to care for family members. Again and again, Victorian society rewarded those who could continue functioning despite emotional challenges. This ability became deeply respected. Dependability earned trust. Consistency earned admiration. Composure earned respect. Many emotionally reserved adults became exceptionally dependable individuals. Others knew they could be counted upon. They fulfilled promises. They honored commitments. They carried responsibilities faithfully. These qualities often strengthened families and communities. At the same time, some people became so skilled at helping others that they neglected themselves. They became experts at carrying burdens quietly. Experts at appearing strong. Experts at concealing distress. The habit of silence could become difficult to break. As afternoon sunlight begins softening, the pace of the city gradually changes. The busiest hours begin fading. Workers think about home. Children think about supper. Families prepare to gather once more. Evening approaches. The transition from work to home was often one of the most important moments of the day. The outside world demanded effort. The home offered shelter. Not perfect shelter. Not complete freedom. But a place where familiar faces waited. A place where routines brought comfort. Inside one modest house, a family prepares the evening meal. The smell of cooking fills the air. The table is set carefully. The room feels warm. Welcoming. The children arrive first. Soon the parents return. The family gathers together. These meals served many purposes. They provided nourishment. They provided structure. And they provided opportunities for connection. Yet even during these moments, emotional culture remained present. Conversations were often practical, respectful, measured. Strong disagreements might be softened. Difficult emotions might remain unspoken. Everyone understood the value placed upon composure. Children observing these interactions absorbed powerful lessons. They learned how adults communicated. They learned what subjects were discussed openly. They learned what subjects remained private. The evening continues. The meal ends. The dishes are cleared away. The family settles near the fire. A book is opened. A letter is written. Someone quietly repairs a garment that has begun to wear thin. The room glows with warm light. Outside, darkness slowly gathers once again. These peaceful domestic scenes formed the emotional landscape of countless Victorian lives. Not dramatic. Not extraordinary. Simply steady. Steady evenings. Steady routines. Steady examples. And from these examples emerged many emotionally quiet adults. Adults who often expressed care through responsibility. Adults who demonstrated affection through reliability. Adults who felt deeply but revealed those feelings selectively. The fire crackles softly. The clock marks another passing hour. The younger children begin growing sleepy. The older family members speak quietly. The atmosphere feels safe, comfortable, familiar. There is something soothing about predictability. Something reassuring about knowing what tomorrow will likely bring. Victorian society often provided this sense of structure. For many people, structure became intertwined with emotional security itself. The familiar routines offered stability during uncertain times. And so those routines were protected, passed down, repeated, preserved. As the night deepens once again, candles burn lower throughout the city. Families prepare for sleep. Doors are locked. Curtains are drawn. The final sounds of the evening fade away. One by one, homes become quiet. The streets become empty. The moon climbs higher above the rooftops. And beneath its gentle light, another day of quiet lessons comes to an end. Lessons about patience. Lessons about reliability. Lessons about carrying responsibilities with dignity. Lessons about expressing love through action. Lessons about remaining steady even when emotions run deep beneath the surface. The city sleeps. The wind moves softly through the darkness. And the long Victorian night continues, calm and unhurried, carrying its quiet influence forward into another peaceful tomorrow. The night feels even quieter now. as if the city has drifted deeper into itself. The wind moves gently between buildings, soft and patient, like it has nowhere else to be. The gas lamps continue their steady glow, though even their light seems dimmer in these late hours. Most of the city is fully asleep. Breathing slows. Rooms grow still. Dreams take over where daylight left off. In this stillness, time feels less important. Hours pass without being noticed. Minutes blend into one another like soft waves along a quiet shore. And beneath this calm surface, Victorian life continues its slow shaping of the human spirit, not through sudden moments, but through the repetition of ordinary days. A child sleeping near an open window hears only faint sounds of the world outside. A distant carriage wheel. A soft bird shifting in a tree. The whisper of wind along stone walls. To the child, these sounds feel far away. Safe. Distant enough not to disturb sleep. But even in sleep, the body remembers the rhythm of its world. The rhythm of routine. The rhythm of expectation. The rhythm of restraint. As the deepest part of night lingers, let us return once more to the quiet life of an ordinary household. The rooms are still. The fire is nearly gone. Only faint warmth remains in the hearth. Upstairs, the family sleeps without movement. Downstairs, the house rests in complete silence. Yet even this silence carries meaning. Because in Victorian life, silence was never empty. It was often full of unspoken understanding. Full of habits learned over years. Full of emotions carefully held within. Many people of the time learned to become comfortable with quietness. Not the quietness of loneliness alone, but the quietness of presence without speech. Sitting together without needing to fill every moment with words. Working alongside others without constant conversation. Sharing space while keeping thoughts private. This kind of quiet became part of emotional life. A form of dignity. A form of discipline. A form of coexistence. As dawn slowly begins to approach once more, the sky changes almost imperceptibly. Darkness loosens its grip. A faint silver line appears near the horizon. The city is still mostly asleep, but morning is preparing itself quietly in the distance. Inside homes, people begin to stir. Not yet fully awake. Just shifting slightly beneath blankets. Turning gently in sleep. The body feels the coming change before the mind does. Another day is arriving. And with it, the familiar cycle returns again. Victorian mornings often carried a sense of quiet seriousness. Not urgency in the modern sense, but purpose. A sense that the day had meaning already assigned to it. Work to be done. Responsibilities to fulfill. Roles to maintain. Children would soon be preparing for school. Adults would soon be preparing for labor. The structure of the day was already understood. And because it was understood, it required little discussion. Much of life in this period operated without constant explanation. People knew what was expected, and they adjusted themselves accordingly. In such an environment, emotional expression often became secondary to function. A person learned to ask not only, "How do I feel?" but also, "What must I do?" And very often, what must be done came first. As the first light of morning spreads across rooftops, chimneys begin to breathe again. Thin streams of smoke rise into the cooling air. The city slowly returns to life. A baker begins preparing ovens. A worker walks toward an early shift. A child wakes to the sound of movement in another room. The day begins without ceremony. Just as it always does. For many Victorian families, Mornings were filled with quiet efficiency. Clothing prepared the night before is worn again. Meals are simple and familiar. Movements are practiced and repeated. There is little need for hesitation. The structure of the day guides everything. Within this structure, emotional life finds its place as well, but often in a restrained form. A child may feel excitement about the day ahead, but excitement is softened. A parent may feel fatigue, but fatigue is set aside. A household may carry concern, but concern is managed carefully. The day requires participation, and participation requires steadiness. As the morning grows brighter, streets begin filling once again. The familiar rhythm of Victorian life resumes. Footsteps on stone. Voices in markets. The distant sound of wheels. Smoke rising into a pale sky. Inside workshops and offices, people take their places. Work begins. Tasks resume. Attention is required. Focus is expected. And throughout all of it, emotional restraint continues to serve as a quiet companion. A clerk sits at a desk, carefully organizing papers, even while personal worries linger in the back of the mind. A seamstress bends over fabric, focusing on precision while thoughts drift to family matters. A shopkeeper greets customers with polite calm, even after a restless night. Life continues forward in measured steps. Not because emotions are absent, but because emotions are often placed beside action rather than in front of it. As midday arrives, sunlight fills the city with warmth. The Victorian world is fully awake now. Alive with movement. Alive with labor. Alive with routine. But beneath this surface activity, the emotional habits shaped over years continue to operate quietly. In the way people speak. In the way they listen. In the way they pause before responding. In the way they hold back certain thoughts while expressing others. These habits are not always visible, but they are deeply present. As afternoon stretches forward, work continues steadily. The world does not pause, and people learn to move with it, to adapt, to endure, to remain composed even when internal experiences shift and change. A young man may feel pressure building in his life, yet he continues his duties without outward disruption. An older woman may carry quiet sorrow, yet she continues caring for those around her. A child may feel confusion, yet continues learning within structured lessons. The expectation is not perfection. It is continuity. To keep going. To remain steady. To fulfill one's role. As evening gradually approaches again, the pace of the city begins to soften. The intensity of work fades. People begin turning their thoughts toward home. Toward rest. Toward familiar rooms and familiar faces. Inside homes, lamps are lit. Warm light returns to windows. The outside world grows darker while the inside world becomes brighter. Families gather once more. The day's responsibilities are discussed briefly. Plans for tomorrow are mentioned. Simple meals are shared. And then the household begins to settle. These evenings, repeated across countless homes, form the emotional rhythm of Victorian life. A rhythm built on repetition. On duty. On care. On restraint. On quiet forms of affection that do not always need words to exist. A parent ensuring comfort. A sibling offering help. A child behaving respectfully. A household moving together through familiar patterns. As night arrives once more, the city becomes still again. Lamps glow softly through curtains. Shadows stretch across empty streets. The wind returns, gentle and steady. And beneath the vast quiet sky, another cycle completes itself. Another day of work. Another day of endurance. Another day of silent emotional learning. And another night begins, carrying with it the same gentle influence that has shaped so many lives in this long, quiet world of Victorian society. The city rests. The stars return. And everything softens again into calm, unhurried sleep. The night grows deeper still. The city feels almost suspended in time. As if even the wind has slowed to match the quiet rhythm of sleeping streets. The gas lamps continue their soft glow, though fewer people remain awake to see them. Their light touches wet stone, wooden doors, and iron railings with a gentle shine that fades into darkness only a few steps away. Most homes are fully asleep now. Rooms are dark. Hallways are still. Staircases remain unused. And within each house, families rest in the same quiet patterns that have been repeated for generations. A parent in one room. Children in another. Perhaps an older relative nearby. Each person held within the same structure of home, the same familiar boundaries of space, the same predictable arrangement of daily life. In such stillness, the Victorian world feels almost like a breathing memory. A slow rhythm of lives that rise and settle, again and again, without ever needing to be spoken aloud. In one small house, a clock ticks steadily on a wooden shelf. Its sound is soft but constant. Measuring time not with urgency, but with patience. Hour after hour passing into one another, as the household remains unaware of each small mark of time slipping by. Victorian life often felt like this. Not rushed in every moment, but deeply structured. Time was understood as something to be used carefully. Something to be respected. Something to be filled with duty. And because of this, people often learn to organize not only their schedules, but also their inner lives around it. Feelings were carried through time rather than expressed within it. A sadness might be postponed until evening. A worry might be set aside until work was finished. A moment of joy might be briefly acknowledged before returning to responsibility. Emotion learned to move alongside duty, rather than interrupt it. As the deepest part of night continues, let us imagine another quiet household in a different part of the city. A modest home with worn steps and well-used furniture. The walls have seen many years of life passing through them. Children growing. Adults aging. Meals shared. Silences kept. This house, like so many others, holds within it countless small memories that no written record ever captured. A laugh that faded years ago. A conversation long forgotten. A moment of worry that passed without notice. A gesture of kindness that was never spoken about again. These small fragments of life form the true texture of history. Not grand events, but quiet repetitions. Inside this home, a family sleeps peacefully. The air is still. The fire is long extinguished. Only the faint scent of ash remains. Outside, the world is dark and calm. Yet even in this calmness, Victorian emotional life continues its slow shaping influence. Because what shapes people most is not what happens once, but what happens repeatedly. Day after day. Year after year. A child grows up hearing calm voices during difficulty. A child grows up watching adults remain composed during stress. A child grows up seeing responsibility placed above personal expression. And so, without realizing it, the child learns that emotional quietness is part of adulthood. Not as a rule spoken aloud, but as a pattern observed again and again. As dawn begins to approach, the sky lightens slightly. A faint gray spreads across the horizon. The city remains mostly asleep, but the world is preparing to turn once more. Soon the familiar sounds will return. Water boiling. Doors opening. Footsteps beginning the day. The Victorian morning does not arrive suddenly. It unfolds slowly, as if the world itself needs time to remember its own routines. In one room, a child shifts slightly in sleep. Dreams begin to loosen. Awareness slowly returns. Not yet fully awake, but close. The body already senses the coming day. And with it, the return of expectation. The return of responsibility. The return of structure. Across the city, similar scenes unfold. People rising in quiet stages. Not with urgency, but with familiarity. A practiced sequence of movements that begins the day without needing explanation. In many homes, mornings begin with simple tasks. Lighting fires. Preparing water. Arranging clothing. Sharing small meals. The tone of the morning is often calm and purposeful. There is little room for lingering in emotional reflection. The day is already waiting. And so attention moves forward. As the morning grows brighter, streets begin to fill once more. The city awakens fully. Carriages pass along roads. Workers walk toward their duties. Children head toward schools. The familiar rhythm resumes. Within this rhythm, emotional restraint continues to exist not as a strict rule, but as a shared understanding. People behave in ways that maintain order, that maintain dignity, that maintain social harmony. A person does not always say what they feel immediately. A person considers how feelings are expressed. A person weighs emotion against context. These habits become deeply ingrained. So much so that they often feel natural rather than learned. As midday arrives, life reaches its most active point. The Victorian world is fully engaged. Factories operate at full pace. Markets are busy. Offices are filled with movement and calculation. Everywhere there is work being done. Everywhere there is effort being made. Within this environment, emotional expression becomes carefully balanced with practicality. A disagreement is managed calmly. A frustration is contained. A disappointment is acknowledged quietly, then set aside. The focus remains on continuation. On progress. On responsibility. And yet, beneath this steady exterior, the human heart continues its full range of feeling. People miss those they love. People hope for better days. People carry private worries and private dreams. The difference lies not in the presence of emotion, but in its expression. As afternoon light softens across the city, the pace begins to slow again. Work draws toward its end. The transition back toward home begins. This transition is always important, because it marks the movement from public expectation to private life. From structured behavior to familiar comfort. From responsibility toward rest. Inside homes, preparations for evening begin. Fires are lit again. Meals are prepared. Rooms are arranged for family gathering. The household becomes a place of return. A place where the day's efforts can finally settle. Yet even here, Victorian emotional habits remain present. Conversation remains measured. Tone remains calm. Conflicts are softened. Affection is shown through care rather than declaration. A shared meal. A repaired garment. A quiet moment of listening. These gestures carry emotional meaning, often more deeply than words. As evening deepens, the house grows warmer. The fire burns steadily. The lamps glow softly. Outside, darkness returns once more. Inside, a sense of shelter grows stronger. Children become sleepy. Adults become quieter. The day's energy slowly dissolves into calm. This cycle repeats endlessly across the Victorian world. And within that repetition, emotional patterns are reinforced gently, almost invisibly. Patience becomes habit. Endurance becomes habit. Composure becomes habit. Care becomes habit. And emotional quietness becomes part of the shape of adulthood for many people. As night arrives again, the city settles into silence. The lamps dim. The streets empty. The wind returns to move gently through the sleeping neighborhoods. And beneath the wide, peaceful sky, another generation rests, carrying forward the same quiet lessons that have been learned slowly over many years. Lessons about duty. About restraint. About care. About carrying life forward with steady hands even when the inner world is full. The city sleeps. And the long, gentle rhythm of Victorian life continues into another still and unbroken night. The night is now at its quietest point. A stillness settles over the entire city that feels almost complete. Even distant sounds seem to hesitate before existing. A wheel turning far away. A soft door closing somewhere unseen. A brief whisper of wind along stone. Then silence again. Deep silence. The kind of silence that makes time feel slower, as if the world is resting not only its body, but its thoughts. In homes across the city, sleep continues without interruption. People lie beneath heavy blankets, breathing evenly, unaware of how the night gently carries them forward. Victorian life, with all its routines and expectations, disappears for a few hours. But only on the surface. Because even in rest, the imprint of daily life remains within the mind. A person who has spent a lifetime in discipline often sleeps with that discipline still quietly present. Not as thought, not as effort, but as habit carried deep into the rhythm of the body. As the night continues, let us imagine a quiet street lined with modest homes. Each one nearly identical in its rhythm of life. Each one holding families shaped by similar expectations. Inside one of these homes, an older man sleeps in a simple bed near a small window. His life has been long. Filled with work. Filled with responsibility. Filled with years that often required him to place duty above comfort. In his younger days, he learned to remain steady during uncertainty. To speak carefully. To act responsibly. To avoid unnecessary display of emotion in public. Now, in old age, these habits remain part of him. Even in sleep, his expression is calm. His rest is composed. Not because he is distant from feeling, but because a lifetime of restraint has become second nature. Across the city, similar lives rest in similar stillness. A woman who spent decades caring for a household now sleeps with the quiet ease of routine behind her. A worker who spent years laboring through long days now rests with the weight of effort softened by habit. A young adult, only beginning to understand responsibility, sleeps with the early shaping of adulthood already forming within them. Each life different, yet each shaped by the same gentle forces. Expectation. Routine. Repetition. As dawn slowly begins its return, the darkness does not leave suddenly. It fades. Almost carefully. As if unwilling to disturb the rest it has held for so long. A faint glow appears at the edge of the sky. Not bright yet. Only present. The city remains asleep, but morning is approaching with quiet patience. In one house, a mother stirs slightly before waking fully. She lies still for a moment, listening to the silence around her. This moment between sleep and waking is often peaceful. A brief space where thoughts have not yet fully formed. Where responsibility has not yet fully returned. Where the world feels distant. Then, slowly, she rises. Not hurried. Not startled. Simply following the familiar rhythm of another day. She lights a small flame. Warm light spreads softly through the room. The fire begins again. The house begins again. Life begins again. This repetition, so common in Victorian households, becomes one of the most powerful forces shaping emotional life. Because repetition teaches without speaking. It teaches that each day continues regardless of how one feels. It teaches that tasks return whether one is ready or not. It teaches that stability is maintained through steady action. And so people learn to move forward. Even gently. Even quietly. Even when emotions are present beneath the surface. Outside, the city begins to awaken. A few early footsteps appear on the streets. A door opens. A distant cart begins moving. The sound of early morning life returns like a slow tide. The Victorian morning is never chaotic at first. It grows. Gradually. Layer by layer. Smoke from chimneys rises into pale sky. Windows begin to glow. Shops prepare for opening. People step into the new day with familiar expressions. Some calm. Some tired. Some thoughtful. All carrying forward the quiet weight of yesterday. Inside homes, breakfast is prepared. Simple meals. Predictable routines. The comfort of repetition. A child sits at the table, still half asleep, watching steam rise from a cup. An adult speaks softly about the day ahead. Plans are made. Responsibilities are acknowledged. Nothing rushed. Nothing loud. Just the steady shaping of another day. As morning deepens, the city fully returns to life. Work begins again. Schools fill again. Streets grow busy again. And once more, emotional restraint finds its place within the structure of the day. Not as something enforced harshly, but as something practiced naturally. A way of moving through the world with steadiness. A way of maintaining dignity in public space. A way of ensuring that responsibilities remain clear and uninterrupted. A clerk focuses on his work despite private worries. A seamstress continues stitching despite fatigue. A teacher maintains calm authority despite the noise of a crowded classroom. These moments repeat across the city in countless variations. And each one reinforces the same quiet lesson. That life continues. That duties remain. That emotions, while real and present, are often carried internally rather than expressed outwardly. As the afternoon light grows softer, the rhythm begins its slow return toward evening once again. The cycle continues. Always familiar. Always steady. A cycle built not only from hours and tasks, but from expectations passed quietly through generations. And so, as another day moves toward its close, the Victorian world remains what it has always been in this quiet telling. A world of effort. A world of responsibility. A world of deeply felt emotions carried with careful hands. And a world where the calm surface of daily life holds within it a much larger, quieter emotional depth that continues to move gently beneath everything seen. Evening returns to the city with a slow, familiar softness. The light changes first. Not suddenly, but gradually, as if the sky itself is lowering its voice. Windows begin to glow one by one. Gas lamps are lit along the streets. Warm circles of light appear against the growing dark, guiding footsteps home. Inside the houses, the atmosphere shifts again. Work is put aside. Doors are closed. Coats are hung near the entrance. The outside world fades into distance, and the inside world becomes the focus once more. This transition, repeated every day, holds a quiet emotional meaning. It is the return from public expectation to private life. From responsibility in the open world to rest within familiar walls. From effort observed by others to effort shared only among family. Victorian evenings were often defined by this gentle return. A return not only of bodies to home, but of attention, of awareness, of inward reflection. In one modest household, a family gathers in the sitting room. The fire is newly lit, and its glow spreads across the furniture in soft, shifting patterns. Shadows move gently along the walls. The room feels enclosed in warmth and quiet protection. A child sits near the hearth, watching the flames without speaking. An adult folds a piece of clothing carefully, repairing it with steady hands. Another reads a letter slowly, as if each line deserves patience. The world outside feels distant now. Almost unreal. Inside, everything is smaller. Slower. More contained. This contained world is where much of Victorian emotional life quietly lived. Not in grand declarations. Not in loud expression. But in shared presence. In steady routines. In careful attention to daily tasks performed side by side. Conversation, when it happens, is often gentle. Measured. Focused on practical matters. Yet beneath these simple exchanges, something deeper moves quietly. A sense of belonging. A sense of responsibility toward one another. A sense of care that does not always need to be spoken in order to be understood. A father glances at his children from time to time. A mother listens carefully even while working with her hands. Children observe their parents closely, learning not only words but tone. Not only instructions but atmosphere. The emotional world of the household is communicated in silence as much as speech. As the evening deepens, the fire becomes the center of the room. Its warmth draws everyone slightly closer. The outside world continues beyond the walls, but it no longer feels urgent. Here, time moves differently. Slower. Softer. More reflective. This is often when private thoughts rise gently to the surface. A person may think about the day that has passed. About tasks completed. About tasks unfinished. About worries that remain unspoken. About hopes that are quietly kept inside. Victorian life allowed little space during the day for such reflection. But evening often provided it. A brief pause before sleep. A moment to consider what has been carried through the hours. And what will be carried into tomorrow. Yet even in reflection, emotional restraint remains present. Thoughts are rarely shared fully. They are held inward. Turned over quietly within the mind. Understood personally, but not always expressed outwardly. As night draws closer, the household begins to settle into slower rhythms. The reading ends. The sewing is put aside. The fire is adjusted for the last time. One by one, the rooms grow quieter. Upstairs, footsteps fade. Doors close softly. The house begins its descent into stillness once again. Outside, the city has already softened into darkness. The lamps along the streets glow steadily, marking the paths between homes. A faint mist begins to form again, drifting low along the ground. The air feels cool. Clean. Calm. Another Victorian day moves toward its end. Another cycle completes itself. And once again, the emotional patterns of life settle gently into rest. Not erased. Not resolved. Simply paused. Ready to continue again with the coming morning. In the quiet of the night, the city seems to hold its breath. As if it too understands the importance of silence. Of repetition. Of steady continuity. And within that silence, countless lives continue their slow, quiet shaping. Lives built on duty. On care. On endurance. On restraint. And on the unspoken understanding that tomorrow will look much like today. The fire dims to glowing embers. The final lamp is extinguished. The house falls into darkness. And across the sleeping city, another night passes gently onward, carrying its quiet influence through every resting mind until morning returns once more. The night settles again into its deepest calm. The city is almost completely still now, as if even time itself has softened its pace. Only the faintest movement remains. A curtain shifting slightly in an open window. A distant clock marking another hour. The slow, steady breath of a sleeping world. Everything else has quieted. In this stillness, the Victorian city feels less like a place of constant activity and more like a collection of resting lives, each one held gently within its own small space of darkness and warmth. Inside these spaces, sleep continues its steady work. Not just resting the body, but smoothing the long edges of the day. Soothing thoughts. Softening tensions. Bringing everything back into quiet balance. As the night moves forward, let us imagine a narrow street lined with closely built homes. The architecture is simple and practical. Brick walls. Wooden doors. Small windows that reflect faint traces of moonlight. These houses stand close to one another, as if sharing warmth through proximity. Within them, families sleep in familiar arrangements shaped by routine and necessity. Upstairs and downstairs. Front rooms and back rooms. Spaces carefully divided, yet all connected through daily life. In one of these homes, a young apprentice sleeps after a long day of learning a trade. His hands, still new to labor, rest quietly beneath a thin blanket. During the day, he is taught discipline. How to repeat tasks carefully. How to listen closely. How to accept correction without resistance. His world is one of gradual shaping. Not sudden change, but steady formation. Each day adds a small layer to his understanding of work, responsibility, and patience. By night, his body rests, but the habits of the day remain embedded within him. This was a common rhythm in Victorian life. Learning not only through instruction, but through repetition. Through doing. Through endurance. And through quiet observation of those more experienced. As dawn begins its gentle return, the sky slowly shifts from deep darkness to a muted gray-blue. The change is subtle at first. Almost unnoticeable. But it spreads steadily across the horizon. The city, still asleep, begins to feel the approach of morning without fully waking. A shift in temperature. A faint sound from outside. A change in light behind closed eyelids. Inside homes, the first movements of the new day begin. A hand adjusts a blanket. A person turns slightly in bed. A breath deepens before waking. The transition between night and morning in Victorian life often felt calm and unhurried. There was no sudden break. Only a gradual return. As if the world itself was easing back into awareness. In the quiet of one kitchen, a kettle is placed carefully near the hearth. A small flame is lit. Water begins to warm. These simple actions signal the beginning of another cycle. Another repetition of familiar duties. Another continuation of structured time. Morning arrives not as an interruption, but as a continuation. The same patterns returning. The same responsibilities awaiting attention. And so, people rise with a sense of familiarity rather than surprise. The day is known, even before it fully begins. Outside, the city slowly reawakens. A few early figures appear on the streets. Wrapped in coats. Moving with purpose. The sound of footsteps returns to the cobblestones. Smoke begins to rise again from chimneys. Windows begin to glow faintly as lamps are lit inside. The Victorian morning grows steadily brighter. Inside homes, families gather once more around simple meals. Bread. Tea. Warm food prepared quickly before the demands of the day begin. Conversation is quiet. Practical. Focused on what lies ahead. Work. School. Tasks. Responsibilities. There is comfort in this predictability. A sense that life, even when difficult, follows a pattern that can be understood. As the morning continues, the city becomes fully active again. Workplaces open. Markets fill. Streets grow busy with movement and exchange. The rhythm of labor returns. Steady. Persistent. Uninterrupted. And within this rhythm, emotional life continues its quiet presence. A worker arrives at his station carrying private thoughts that remain unspoken. A mother continues her duties while thinking of someone far away. A child walks to school with both curiosity and quiet apprehension. Yet all move forward. All continue. All participate in the shared structure of daily life. As midday approaches, the intensity of activity increases. The Victorian world is fully engaged once more in its patterns of work and obligation. But beneath this visible movement, something quieter continues to unfold. The steady shaping of character, of habit, of emotional restraint balanced with deep, unspoken feeling. People learn how to function within a world that demands consistency. And in doing so, they also learn how to carry their inner lives quietly alongside their outer ones. As afternoon light begins to soften again, the cycle prepares itself for another transition. Work will ease. Home will return. Evening will gather. And once more, the familiar rhythm of Victorian life will continue its endless turning. A rhythm built not only on time and labor, but on the quiet shaping of human feeling across countless ordinary days. And so the city moves forward. Steady. Calm. Endlessly repeating. Carrying within it the gentle, unseen influence of every night that has passed, and every day still to come. Night settles over the city one last time. Not with drama. Not with finality that feels sharp or sudden. But with a slow, familiar fading, like a hand gently lowering a lantern until only a soft glow remains. The streets are quiet now. The lamps burn low. The wind moves lightly through empty spaces between buildings, as if it is simply passing through rather than arriving anywhere at all. Inside the homes, everything becomes still. The day is complete. Not finished in a way that feels dramatic, but finished in the way routines are finished. Quietly. Repeatedly. Without ceremony. In the rooms of the city, people sleep as they have slept through so many nights before. Bodies relaxed. Breathing steady. Thoughts drifting into the soft distance where memory and rest begin to blur. And beneath that sleep, beneath the long rhythm of countless ordinary lives, the shape of an era gently rests as well. A world built on duty. on repetition, on structure that held each day in place like a carefully arranged pattern. In that world, emotion was never absent. It moved through everything. But it often moved quietly, carried inward, expressed in smaller ways. A careful gesture, a steady presence, a responsibility fulfilled without announcement, a kindness shown through action rather than words. Over time, these habits became part of how people understood themselves. Not as a rule forced upon them, but as a rhythm learned slowly, through watching others, through growing up inside familiar rooms, through living the same kinds of days again and again. And so generations formed. Each one shaped gently by the one before. Each one passing forward not only skills and duties, but ways of holding feeling itself. Outside, the night remains calm. The sky is wide and still. Stars continue their quiet watching over the sleeping city. Nothing interrupts them. Nothing demands attention. Everything simply exists in its place. As if the world has agreed, for a moment, to rest without question. Inside the homes, the last traces of warmth settle into ash and ember. The final movements of the day are gone. Only silence remains now. Not empty silence, but complete silence. The kind that feels full of everything that came before it. All the labor, all the repetition, all the small, unseen moments of care and endurance. All of it resting together in one shared stillness. And in that stillness, there is a softness that remains. A quiet understanding that life, even when heavy with responsibility, was also built from countless gentle acts. Days of effort. Nights of recovery. Years of returning again and again to the same patterns that shaped both work and home. The Victorian world fades here not in conclusion, but in continuation. Because what it created did not end suddenly. It simply flowed forward into new times, carrying its habits, its rhythms, and its quiet emotional textures into the lives that followed. Now, only the night remains. The city breathes slowly. The wind softens. The lamps dim further. And everything begins to drift into the kind of sleep that feels endless. A sleep without urgency. Without demand. Without expectation. Just rest. Deep and complete. Until even the idea of time feels far away. And in that final quiet, the world lets go for a moment. Not forever. Just enough. Enough to be still. Enough to be at peace. And the night continues on, holding everything gently, until it too slowly disappears into morning light.